Hi guys, and thank you for joining me. If you are new to my channel, I'm Kat and I like to talk about true crime, conspiracies and all sorts of related things. Before we start with today's case, I just want to tell you a very short story of what happened to me just a couple of days ago. I'm recording this video today is Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday. And on Sunday, here in the UK, we celebrated Mother's Day and I went out and I eventually ended up in McDonald's. My intention was not to go to McDonald's. I actually went out shopping, but it was already like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I hadn't eaten anything and I was already feeling sick and sleepy and dizzy, so I knew that I really needed to eat something, and McDonald's was the closest to the shopping center, so yeah, that's that. Anyway, I'm ordering a wrap, a barbecue chicken wrap. By the way, I hate the barbecue sauce in McDonald's. Yeah, I do. I don't know, McDonald's, you need to sort it out because I don't like it sweet. I like it smoky. Okay, never mind. Anyway, my personal preference. So I'm ordering this chicken wrap and I start taking a really nice bite of it. I was really hungry and I was looking forward to it. And I chew and at one point I can feel in my mouth something really hard, which is not supposed to be in there. I take it out of my mouth and I see that it's half a tooth. Half a tooth. Yes. Instantly I'm thinking, oh my god, I found a tooth in the chicken. And I'm like, oh, this is disgusting. God knows whose tooth is that. But then I'm thinking to myself, hold on a second. Is it not my tooth by any chance? So I start looking around my mouth to see at the front, do I still have all my teeth here? I was instantly thinking, oh my god, how can I record a video now? My tooth is chipped, I can't record any videos now, oh my god. And yes, it turned out that it was actually my tooth, but the back tooth, which now is completely empty because it had a filling in and it just cracked and it broke. And yes, I was chewing on my own tooth. Yes, and you know what that reminded me of? There was this case of a scammer. I think it involved Wendy's. I'm not sure if you remember this case. It was quite a few years ago and a lot of big YouTubers covered this case. It was this lady, she was trying to scam Wendy's and she bought a staple food of theirs. I think it was bean chili in the US, Wendy's. And she said that she found a human finger in the food. Yeah, this is exactly what my mind got me to when I had the situation with the tooth, so I really had to say it to you. Anyway, okay, that's that. Tooth or no tooth, I still have my teeth, but the back tooth is missing. Anyway, after Gonzalo's body was found in a ditch and his car was burnt, no one really understood why someone might want to kill such a happy, hard-working young man just months before his wedding. The family of 20-year-old Gonzalo Pizano-Guzman reported him missing almost immediately after they noticed he was gone on July the 7th, 2000. Juana Pizano, Gonzalo's sister, said that on that morning their mom saw his bed was made like no one has slept there, so obviously they all got concerned that he never came home the night before. They were all left in a panic because this was unlike Gonzalo. It wasn't something he would do and all of it just seemed odd. The family drove throughout their small hometown of Cornelius, Oregon, searching for answers, and when they couldn't find his car, they reported him missing to the police. They were all extremely distraught by his disappearance. He wouldn't miss work without calling in and no one was able to reach him by pager or by phone. And if you are much younger than I am, I feel sometimes that I'm 100 years old, you probably haven't heard about a pager. Yeah, it was a thing. Much earlier than mobile phones, a pager is essentially a wireless telecommunications device that receives and displays alphanumeric or voice messages. One-way pagers can only receive messages, while response pagers and two-way pagers can also acknowledge, reply to and send messages using an internal transmitter. They were widely used in the 80s. Think of it like a very basic phone without a lot of buttons. And I think that by now they are extinct, but probably they are still being used in hospitals by doctors when they are paged over to the emergency room for an emergency, if I'm not mistaken. Now, there you go, history lesson learned in less than 5 minutes. Okay, let's carry on. Going back to our story, Gonzalo's family kept looking and very soon his father found Gonzalo's car burnt out in an empty field. Gonzalo's brother, Ben Pizano, said his dad rushed to the car. He opened up the car obviously, but to his surprise, there was no one inside. After finding his car, but without any sign of Gonzalo, it got even worse. There were questions of where could he be? Was he kidnapped? Is he dead? What happened? Who took him? Obviously, they called the police to the scene of the burnt car. Washington County Sheriff's Office Detective Mike O'Connell recalled that Gonzalo's car was completely destroyed by the fire and it looked as if there was accelerant poured all over it, something like gasoline. So that would mean this was foul play. It wasn't just a car on fire from a fault. This was done on purpose. But the only other evidence they found at the scene were a few discarded zip ties near the car. But this was not going to stop here. The family's worst fears came to life when police received a call from a woman 11 miles away from the car at Henry Hagg Lake, saying she saw what looked like a dead body in a ditch. This young man found in the ditch matched not only the physical description, the clothing, but also the jewelry. At this point, there was absolutely no doubt this body was Gonzalo. This turned into a homicide. There was evidence of bullet wounds on the body and repeated knife blows to the heart. There were also some injuries to the back of the head, and it was clear the young man was bludgeoned. Whoever did this clearly was someone who knew him. This was personal. This was someone showing their anger. This was a homicide. Even though Gonzalo's wallet and pager were missing, he still had 2 religious medals on gold chains around his neck, and this quickly ruled out that the motive could have been robbery. But then, near his body there were even more zip ties found, which matched the ones found at the scene of the car on fire. Not only was Gonzalo found bludgeoned to death in a ditch, clearly indicating someone killed him, but his car being found 11 miles away from him, indicating it was set on fire. The police now had a puzzling case. There was no strong motive why this man was murdered. Everything was going great in his life. He was about to get married. He was a happy, hard-working young man with a loving family. The police now have a very unique case. However, they start their investigation. They start by interviewing Gonzalo's fiancée, Sol, who they initially believed was the last person to see him alive. The night Gonzalo went missing, him and Sol were sitting on the front porch going through their wedding planning, but it turns out that they weren't alone. Sol's cousin Jamie and his friend Eddie were playing basketball by the garage. Jamie and Eddie told police that as he was leaving at 9:15 p.m. they asked Gonzalo for a ride because they were running late for work at the Hawthorne Farm Athletic Club and Spa, about 20 minutes east of Cornelius in Hillsborough. The two of them worked on a janitorial team run by Sol's brother, Rafael Mora-Contreras, and they were supposed to start work at 10 p.m. that evening. Eventually, they said, Rafael picked them up at Eddie's house and they all worked until 4 a.m. and Rafael confirmed this story. According to reports, Rafael was an incredibly self-possessed 19-year-old. Police then received Gonzalo's autopsy report, which put his time of death around 10 p.m. on July the 6th, only 45 minutes after he said goodbye to his fiancée Sol. The brutality of the attack suggested the killer was someone Gonzalo knew. The close cluster of the knife wounds directed at the heart did speak of extreme rage and a violent emotion. In most of these cases, not only is it personal because of the brutality of the attack, but also the victim knows the attacker. Police went to Gonzalo's place of work to see if anyone had problems with him, and they actually discovered that he was having an affair with a co-worker called Babette. She was very upset to hear that he was murdered, and she admitted they had been involved for a couple of months, but it was just a secret fling, nothing serious. She was already aware of a fiancé, and she didn't really want anything serious with Gonzalo, and he felt the same way. Now you can imagine another blow that this family receives. Not only was Gonzalo killed by someone known to him, but now he's found out to have had an affair whilst at the same time planning his wedding with Sol, which was due in a few months. Sol is not only heartbroken from the loss of her future husband, but now she has to deal with knowing all this time he had an affair. The detective on the case was thinking that perhaps Babette's feelings for Gonzalo were stronger than she let on, and maybe this was the motive. Remember how the injuries suggested it was personal, someone known to Gonzalo? But it turns out that actually she had an alibi. She was out running errands the day of the murder and the alibi actually checked out. However, she did suspect that her abusive ex-boyfriend Oscar Rodriguez could have been involved in Gonzalo's death. Oscar Rodriguez, as it turns out, has a criminal history, and on top of that he wasn't so keen to cooperate with investigators. But unfortunately this lead didn't pan out because Oscar was serving time in the local restitution center, which is a secure facility that allows inmates out on work release on a pass system. And like everyone there, he was locked down at night, and so he couldn't have killed Gonzalo. The investigators are now back to square one. They don't have any other leads until, fast forward, 2 months later. That's when they decide to just talk to everyone again. So they went back to Eddie and Jamie, the last people to see Gonzalo alive, to ask them to take a polygraph test. They both had cold feet, they didn't really want to do it, which is always a red flag in my opinion. However, on September 14th, Eddie went in to take the polygraph test. But, check this out, the polygrapher is hooking Eddie up, right? Attaching all of this list to him to measure his response, and he doesn't even get to the questions yet, and he's already saying he will tell investigators what happened. All it took for Eddie at this point was only to come to terms with the fact that he is indeed going to take a polygraph. He knew he's going to fail, and obviously in a frenzy and the panic he starts talking. You remember Rafael, Sol's 19-year-old brother and the young entrepreneur who had the janitorial business? Well, this is a turn in the case. Eddie told investigators that he was approached by Rafael, Sol's brother, to arrange the delivery of Gonzalo to the Forest Hills Country Club parking lot, which was on the south side of Cornelius, rather than the east side toward where they were supposed to go to work. Rafael asked the help of Joseph Noble, another friend of his, as well as Eddie and Jamie in the plan to get Gonzalo. Eddie and Jamie were supposed to get Gonzalo to drive them in his car to the golf course, which obviously they did. When they pulled up, Eddie and Jamie got out of the car, and then Joseph Noble got into Gonzalo's car and pointed the gun at him. Rafael was there in his white Ford F-150, and the two of them left with Gonzalo, whilst Eddie and Jamie got back to their own vehicle, drove home and waited to go to work like usual, just like nothing happened. And for your reference, from now on I'm going to refer to Joseph as Joe. But according to Eddie, Rafael wasn't really a young legitimate entrepreneur. He was an active drug dealer. But surprisingly, Eddie couldn't explain why Rafael would want Gonzalo dead. Later on, Sol was the one who was able to explain that. She told police that Rafael tried to talk her out of the wedding, saying that she was just too young. Rafael would also quite often mock Gonzalo, even to his face, for being poor, driving a terrible car, buying cheap wine, and he often threatened to destroy Gonzalo's car. Joe Noble, his friend, was also known to be a small-time criminal. An informant told police he was concerned that the .40 caliber pistol he sold to Joe might have been the murder weapon, because Joe later asked a woman he met at a local bar to provide an alibi for him on the night of the murder. The woman confirmed Joe asked her for an alibi, but they weren't together on the evening in question. With this information, police bring Joe in for questioning, and he swears he had nothing to do with Gonzalo's murder, even offering up his fake alibi. When police say they already spoke to the woman who was supposed to be his alibi, surprise, surprise, Joe Noble lawyers up and gets released. Rafael, in the meantime, disappears, just vanishes completely. Police issued an arrest warrant on September 28 on a charge of aggravated murder and kidnapping. They found him that same day hiding at his girlfriend's house, having dyed his hair orange. Talk about going on the low and hiding from police by dyeing your hair orange, which stands out even more. Out of all the colors in this world, you decide to dye your hair orange so that people notice you even more. Some of these criminals, you know, they really don't think it through, do they? Joe Noble is being brought back for questioning, and finally he admits to being in the parking lot and being there when the car was later burned. He also admits to kidnapping and pistol whipping Gonzalo, insisting it was Rafael who ordered him to do that. Police also get a warrant for Rafael's phone records, which show that his phone was not pinging off the tower near the gym he worked at, but off a tower near where Gonzalo's body was eventually discovered. In 2003, Joe Noble and Rafael Mora-Contreras went to trial together for aggravated murder and first-degree kidnapping. Prosecutors argued that Joe Noble shot Gonzalo, but it was Rafael who stabbed him. Prosecutors also believed Rafael paid Joe to commit the crime. At trial, a new witness testified that Rafael bragged about killing Gonzalo, mocking him for having begged for his life. On April 28, 2003, Joe and Rafael were found guilty of murder. Joe was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 25 years, while Rafael was sentenced to life with no possibility of parole. The joint trial of Rafael and Joe in 2003 remains one of the lengthiest and most complex in Washington County history. During the trial, many individuals testified, some willingly and others not so much. Both defendants took the witness stand and proclaimed their innocence while blaming the other for Gonzalo's murder. The jury convicted both men of murder and each received a life sentence. Specifically, Rafael was convicted of aggravated murder based on the theory that he paid Joe Noble to carry out the crime. Both convictions were affirmed by the Oregon Court of Appeals. But this wasn't over just when you thought it was. In 2008, Rafael filed a petition for post-conviction relief, PCR, in Marion County Circuit Court, alleging that the performance of his original defense attorneys and his appeal attorneys was defective in many ways. And because they are terms I'm not familiar with, of course I'm going to Google it like everybody does. So, a post-conviction relief is a procedure that allows the defendant in a criminal case to bring more evidence or raise additional issues in a case after a judgment has been made post-trial. With valid grounds, post-conviction relief can help obtain a fair resolution in a case. Surprisingly, the PCR litigation took 9 years from beginning to end.
The family of a man murdered in Washington County more than 2 decades ago says they are once again facing a nightmare. The man convicted in the killing may be getting a new plea deal and could be set to be free in a matter of years. The family alleges the justice system has failed them.
K2's Carmen Montez spoke with the family, has the very latest on this case.
The victim's family will be at the Washington County Courthouse tomorrow morning to hear the plea deal the district attorney's office made with the man responsible for this death.
We were blindsided. We didn't see this coming.
Juana Pizano is Gonzalo Pizano-Guzman's younger sister and says that after they thought they had gotten justice in 2000 for her brother's death, in 2018 they found out that one of the men responsible for his death was granted post-conviction relief. Rafael Mora-Contreras appealed his sentence to life without parole, arguing that he was not properly represented given that he had a stunt belt put on him and was unable to communicate with his attorneys. Fast forward to 2021, the family had been talking to the DA's office and preparing for a retrial set for June, but just a few months ago found out that the DA's office had struck a plea deal with Mora-Contreras, giving him the opportunity for lesser charges and a chance to walk free in 6 years if he pled guilty.
There was 20 boxes of evidence. Roger Hanlon's office got converted into Gonzalo. I remember that till this day, back in 2003, when the trial was happening. How do you go from 20 boxes of evidence to, oh, no one wants to talk anymore? We don't have any witnesses.
The family says they feel the justice system in Oregon has failed them, adding they were enrolled in the VINE system that notifies victims of changes in cases, but the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center says that it will only notify them when an inmate is released or moved from one facility to another unless they were enrolled to receive notifications from the DA's office.
If the defendant is scheduled for something like a change of plea hearing or a sentencing or something like that, and the victim has asserted that right with the district attorney's office and they do not get notification, technically they could file a claim of violation.
The Pizano-Guzman family is raising their voice so this doesn't happen to other families. Tomorrow, the Washington County Court will look over the case. A judge could decide to release Mora-Contreras in 6 years. We reached out to the DA's office. They say they can't comment on pending cases, but will release a statement once it is resolved. In Washington County, Carmen Montes, K2 News.
In November 2017, retired Marion County Judge James Rhodes issued an opinion granting post-conviction relief to Rafael and sending his case back for a new trial. Judge Rhodes ruled that Rafael's defense attorney should have objected to the requirement that he wear a leg restraint and or a stun belt, which are fully concealed anti-escape devices during the trial. The Washington County District Attorney's Office was surprised and quite disappointed by this ruling and requested the Department of Justice to appeal Judge Rhodes' decision. The Department of Justice declined to appeal, and Rafael was then returned from state prison to the Washington County Jail to await his new trial. The new trial process has taken several years to progress to this point, due in part to delays associated with the pandemic and in part to challenges associated with retrying a case nearly 2 decades later. New defense attorneys were appointed to represent Rafael and new prosecutors were assigned. One of the original prosecutors is now a judge and the other has retired. Additionally, many aspects of the case against Rafael have changed in the over 17 years since the original trial. Some witnesses have died, others have become uncooperative, and significant evidence is no longer available to the state. Furthermore, the law has since amended the Oregon murder statuses in ways that benefit criminal defendants. Given the changed dynamics, the Washington County DA in 2021 agreed to participate in a settlement conference with Judge Eric Bergstrom, a veteran judge of dozens of murder cases. Judge Bergstrom mediated and agreed to the resolution of this case. Rafael Mora-Contreras was allowed to plead guilty to manslaughter in the first degree and kidnapping in the second degree to avoid a retrial. He was sentenced to 25 years and 10 months in prison. He will be eligible for parole in July 2024. So in just 2 years' time. Joe Noble didn't seek any post-conviction relief and he remains incarcerated on his original sentence. He would not be eligible for parole until 2031.
Following a man convicted of murder in 2003 was back in court today for his arraignment. In his retrial, Rafael Contreras was convicted for the 2000 murder of Gonzalo Guzman. His attorneys say he did not receive adequate legal representation and an appeals court overturned his conviction. Guzman's family says they're confident he will be convicted again.
The truth is, Rafael Mora-Contreras murdered my brother, and there's nothing else. So there is no fear. I know at the end of the day, again, nothing's gonna change. He will be convicted for murdering my brother.
Guzman was just 19 when his body was found near Hague Lake. His family tells us the retrial is setting them back in the grieving process and forcing them to remember the way he died.
Obviously, Gonzalo's family were very upset, and rightly so. They were feeling left blindsided and they didn't see that coming, and I don't think anybody did. The family had been talking to the Washington County District Attorney's Office and were preparing for a retrial set for June 2021. However, just a few months before the retrial date, they found out that the DA's office had struck a plea deal with Rafael, giving him the opportunity for lesser charges and the chance to be released in 6 years if he pled guilty. Gonzalo's family say they feel the justice system in Oregon has failed them, adding they were enrolled in the VINE system that notifies victims of changes in cases. But the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center says that it will only notify them when an inmate is released or moved to another facility unless they were enrolled in the notifications from the DA's office. If a defendant is scheduled for something like a change of plea hearing or sentencing or something like that, and the victim has asserted the right with the district attorney's office and they don't get a notification, they can technically file a claim of violation, said Rosemary Brewer from the Oregon Crime Victims Law Center. You see what a huge difference 14 years makes. After the 2003 conviction of Rafael and getting life in prison with no parole because of the law changes, it worked in his favor, and now his sentence was reduced to 25 years. That's hardly justice for Gonzalo and his family. And Gonzalo didn't do anything wrong. All he did was try to build a life and a family for himself with Sol, Rafael's sister. But Rafael believed she was just too young to get married, and that's how a young man lost his life. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please let me know what do you think in the comment section down below. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up or a thumbs down, whichever way you prefer. Either way, it helps me and my channel out. And if you didn't subscribe already, please make sure you hit the subscribe button and also turn your notification bell on so you are notified of any new videos I upload. And if you ever want to buy me a coffee, I'm leaving the link for you on the screen and also in the description section below. For now, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!